Okay, so now to get started, I'm in my htdocs folder. What you may have noticed is that I have a little shortcut over here. You can see it's got a little, well, it's really hard to see, but you can see it has a little arrow in the bottom left corner. So in the Apple world, if I right click on this, I can create an alias. I can make an alias. So I just do that so I don't have to dig around into the applications folder and go find MAMP and then go find htdocs and then find all my stuff. So I recommend you just throw that on your desktop if you're going to use this quite often, because it's super handy to have it right there. So then in the htdocs folder, I just create a new folder for the site that we're going to do. So I'm going to call this one MAMP, just as a basic. This is the name of our site that we're going to build. And then another little cheat sheet that or not a cheat sheet, but a little whatever handy thing that I use is I have a folder on my desktop called Site Stuff. Really, really specific and technical name. But what you will see in here is just things that I mess with all the time. So this is Beaver Builder, which we'll be doing training classes on those coming up. So there's a plugin, the theme, and then a Beaver Builder child theme that I have customized myself, and we'll go over that in that other video. You see a version of Woocommerce that I call local Woocommerce. So if I'm doing searching for hooks or filters in Woocommerce, I'm trying to figure things out with template files, I have my own copy of Woocommerce here. I just grab the new one off of their website every couple of months. And then I have a folder called WordPress. So this is just straight up a WordPress install downloaded from WordPress.org. And I'm not going to show that. So anyway, what I do is I have my folder over here in the htdocs folder, which is inside of MAMP, called MAMP. I just created a new site called that. And then I'm just going to drag all of the core WordPress files into that folder. And then on the Mac, I'm not clicking any keys right now, but you'll notice I have a red circle 19. And what that's doing is it's going to move everything over here, and I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to hold down the Option key on my keyboard, and that adds the plus sign, and that means it's going to copy it instead of moving it, because I don't really want to, have to re-download WordPress every time. So it takes a couple seconds, it throws everything in there, and then now I'm kind of done with my cheat sheet install over here. I guess while we're talking about it, I will mention this as well. Very often when I build a brand new WordPress site for a client, I am a huge fan of the Beaver Builder theme. I also use Gravity Forms, typically WooCommerce, Yoast SEO, Akismet is usually already in there. So there's a handful of plugins and themes that I use on just about every install that I start with. So the other thing you can do, which I have not done yet, I literally just downloaded this WordPress this morning, so it's the most current WordPress, and I downloaded the WooCommerce as well, is what I would normally do is put in this themes folder, the Beaver Builder parent theme and my Beaver Builder child theme, and then I would rename it and call it whatever, and then in plugins, I would add into here Gravity Forms and WooCommerce and maybe advanced custom fields. There's videos that we have on those as well, custom post type UI, whatever it may be. And you can see I have Gravity Forms right here ready to go. So anyway, I would encourage you to make your native kind of your cheat sheet, if you will, WordPress install, make it custom for you. So put the themes that you're going to use in here. I mean, there's no reason, in my opinion, to have 2016 and 2017 in here. So I'm just going to delete those right now. So the next time I build a site, they're not going to be in there. So anyway, so I would recommend that you head down that road, even though I did not this particular time. So now back over here, we're still in my MAMP folder, and we're in the htdocs folder in there. And then inside of there, we have our MAMP install. So we have all of the regular core folders that show up with WordPress, and then all the regular files that show up. The one thing that most of you are familiar with is the config sample is not something we actually use. What we need is config. Config sample doesn't do us any good. So I'm just going to change that right now to config. And then if I open it up, I'm using Sublime. For those of you who are text editor fans of Sublime, but you can use any text editor you want. You 100% do not ever want to use like Microsoft Word or those kind of applications. when you're doing development, because it will just mess up your code. Nothing against Microsoft Word, of course, but all right. So now we have my folder. I have my WordPress install. I have my config, which has a bunch of the generic stuff in here. I don't have a database or a username or a password yet. All things that are critical for the WordPress install. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So when I started up MAMP in that first video, it spun up a little web page, and within this web page is Php Myadmin. If you're not familiar with that, that's basically just the way that we have, and it's the same on SiteGround. WP Engine uses it. It's a way for most web servers to give us access to the database. So what you'll see over here on the left are the databases that match with my folders here on the left as well. So I have all these websites built, and then if I were to go to the SNS Builders one, I have my install, and then if I look at WP config, it's saying, oh, okay, well, the database name is SS Builders. Sure enough, right here, we have a database called SS Builders. So what we need is a database for our new website, and then we need to make that connection. So I'm going to bring this back to MAMP, and then we do have that config file still open. So, all right, so let's do that. So if I click on this tab right here, it's databases, and I'm just going to make us a new database, and I'm going to be really creative and call it MAMP. I'm literally just going to hit enter. So now, boom, I have a MAMP database. Now, if you've never played in Php Myadmin before, one thing you'll notice is that when I click on SNS Builders, I get a whole bunch of tables. Databases are made up of tables in this particular in the SQL world, if you will. Most databases, I think, run that way. So anyway, we have a bunch of tables in here, and then if I click on WP Options, which is really kind of the most pertinent one that you're going to be messing with if you ever have to come in here and mess around. Sometimes you have to add a new user or change the password of a new user. That's a whole different class. But in WP Options, what you'll notice is if I go into Browse, it's going to say localhost 8888, and that doesn't matter right now, but that is just the name of our site. That is the URL that MAMP uses to show this website. So once we tell MAMP which of these, we want you to use the MAMP folder, not the SS Builders folder, then when we go to localhost 8888, it'll just show our site. So for now, anyway, all we have is a database called MAMP, and there's nothing in it, which is perfectly fine. So I'm going to come back over here, and our database name is MAMP. And then you're probably asking, well, what's the username and password? So I'm going to go back to our home page that MAMP kind of spun up for us. And within here, it kind of gives you some examples of how to configure your config file to make it work for WordPress. So right here in the middle is giving us the MySQL information. So MySQL can be administered with Php Myadmin, which we clicked on over here, and it's telling us what our host is, what the port is, and then the username and password. So it just so happens that in MAMP, the username and password are root. This does not matter out in the real world because unless somebody steals your computer, they're not going to have access to your site and your database, and you can't get hacked and all those things. So in general, for every site that you run in MAMP, your database name will be whatever you called it. And I have, a bunch in here. One's called SS Builders, Splash, and HP Cattle, and whatever else. And then for all of these, for every database I have, the username and the password are both set to root. And I guess I will note that you should be very careful about these quotation marks. You need to make sure that you're not overwriting a quotation mark. There's single quotes, and everything goes in between those. And when you run when you first load your new WordPress install, they all show up, empty: database name, username, password. So as long as you're careful to put those in the quotes, and all I'm going to do is save this. If you were doing this on a live web server, it is recommended that you go in and put these salt keys in here. I will let you Google that on your own and figure out what a salt key is. I guess for right now, I'll just go ahead and do it. So I'm just going to copy the URL into our browser. For no particularly logical reason, I hit refresh a couple times, which changes these things. And then I just grab the whole shoot and match and paste it into my config file. So if we were on a live server, it would say your database name, you would have a much more clever username and password on your server, and then you would change your salt keys. And this is a good idea anytime you move a server, a website from one server to the other, from SiteGround to WP Engine or whatever you do. So anyway, that's it. All this other stuff you can pretty much ignore, and we can go into those in detail later, but today is really just about MAMP. So we have our database, our username, our password, and then just for giggles, we threw in our salt keys, and I have now saved the database, or saved this file, sorry. So I'm going to close that. And then the last thing we need to do is, back in our little application window here, we need to tell MAMP that, hey, we want you to run our MAMP website, not whatever it is you're doing now. So up in here, I'm going to click on MAMP and then Preferences, and that will open our preference windows here. I leave all these things default, but you can kind of peek around through here and check these out on your way through. I like to have it check for updates. I like to have it start the servers, and then I like to have it open up that web start page that is this guy right here. I like to see that because inevitably I'm going into PHP Myadmin, or I just want to click on my website and have it bring me to the website. So I typically have all those things happening. And I wanted to stop the servers when I quit MAMP. I don't have a favorite link. So ports, again, I leave these default. If you're doing something beyond like beginning MAMP class would cover, these may change. But for folks that are watching this just as a beginning intro into MAMP, leave these things alone. PHP version, it will be current with when you download MAMP. Today is October 27th, 2019. So 7.3.8 is the most current version of PHP. That will, if I downloaded this, heck, if I download it today, it might even be higher than 7.3.8. But if I download it in a couple of months, for sure it's going to be higher than 7.3.8. So, and I have my cache turned off, and that's the default as well. Just know as well, while we're talking about PHP, is that you can have any version of PHP that is available, and you can use it in MAMP. So for example, if you had a 5.6, a website that was built on 5.6, or an app that was built on PHP 5.6, you can go grab that, load it into MAMP, you can Google the instructions and figure out how to do that, and then it would show up here. So the version of MAMP would be 7.3.8 and then 5.6, so you could roll back to that other version just while you're running this website. And then when you're ready to go work on a different website that is able to use the most current version of PHP, you would then do that. You would then choose 7.3.8. Okay, and then the most important one is the web server. So I leave it as Apache, which is the default when you load it. And then you'll see the document root here. And what it's showing us is that folder that we looked at earlier that's kind of over on our left-hand side there is under Applications, MAMP, htdocs, and then it's currently SNS Builders. But what we want, I'm going to hit the select button here, what we want is to choose MAMP, the site that we just built that is kind of blank. So here we are under MAMP, htdocs, and then here's our MAMP folder, and here's our fresh install. So I'm just going to hit select, and that changes it. So now our document root, so the folder that MAMP is going to use for us is going to be the MAMP folder that we just built. MySQL, I leave alone, and then cloud, I'm not signed up for their cloud, so I don't use that. And I just hit OK. And what you'll see happen here is that the servers are going to stop. You can see the little things spinning. And then the servers start back up again. So I think, yeah, right back in here. So you can see that Apache and MySQL are both green. They have started. My server button, my start servers is green. And then now I have two different MAMP home pages. Like I have this one that we started with, and then I have a new one. So what I always do is once it's restarted the servers, I just close that other one because we don't really need that. And then I just simply hit my website. And what's going to happen is it's going to go to the MAMP folder that we created, this little guy right here, and then it's going to try and spin up WordPress. Now it's going to not show us a website because we have no database, but what we will see is that intro screen that you get with a WordPress site. So let's just give that a shot. I'm going to click my website, and there we go. We have the welcome to WordPress installation, and you can go through and fill this out, and then begin your development.